All right, we're recording, so let's get started. So I don't know if I actually have 5 ways to hire and retain great people for the on-demand economy. It might be more, it might be slightly less, but we do have a number of tips that will help you guys hire your employees or contractors or whatever you end up hiring. We don't, I'm not going to really go into contractors versus employees, but I will just talk about some general tips that we have to hire great people. All right, so again, I am outside, so you're probably going to hear kids running around. If you can't hear me, please just let me know. All right. All right. So who do you want to hire? I found that when I'm hiring people, the best people are people that are currently employed. And this probably goes against what you feel, but people that are currently employed are people that are employable. Typically, when I would hire someone who was desperate for a job or that hadn't had a job in a while, they don't have a job for a reason. And that's not to say that you don't want to give people opportunities, but just expect that your success with hiring people that already have a job is generally going to be greater. So what I do is I typically hire people that I pay more where I am. So when I go to hire people, I'll look on Indeed and I'll see people who are currently working at, say, Molly Maids or Mary Maids or whoever the competitors are, and I'll send them a message because typically they are getting paid probably 2 to 3 less dollars an hour than I offer. So I'll ask them if they're currently satisfied, and I don't have really an issue with, I guess, poaching competitors, cleaners, just because, again, people who are already hired and already trained tend to be better employees. So I send them a message. I don't necessarily say, I'm trying to take you away from your company. I just let them know about our company, ask them if they have any extra hours that they want to work, and typically I get a good response rate and a good retention rate from people who have a job. I also try to hire people with experience. So perhaps someone doesn't have a job, maybe they're new to the area, they've just moved, but they've done this before. They're going to go to the top of my list when I'm looking to hire people. Of course, people that are background checked. I posted in the Launch 27 group a couple weeks ago, and this was an admin person, but still, I posted that I almost hired a woman, and not almost, because I told her pending the background check she was hired, but I almost hired a woman with, I believe, 8 grand larceny felonies or something like that. So I don't hire you completely until you pass that background check. Also, people that follow instructions. So this is a big deal, and one of the Launch 27 people, I learned this from him. So we were on the phone talking about business, and he got a call from a potential applicant, and she was asking about the job, and he gave her a few instructions and said, okay, text me your information, text me this, and that. And I asked him why he asked her to text him, and he said because if she can follow those instructions and text me every piece of information she needs, then I know that she'll be able to follow instructions later on when I'm working. So that's a big thing, is to make sure that they can follow instructions straight away. So that's one of the main things that I look for when I'm looking to hire. I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. So again, can you press 1, just so I know there's a bit of background noise, but I just want to make sure that I'm coming through clearly. So if you can hear me, please press 1. Okay, perfect. All right, so that's who I'm looking to hire. Now, how do I find them? So typically what I do, my first go-to is I post on Craigslist. I post both in paid and in gigs. I'll start out in gigs because, of course, you always want to get as much free as, you want to spend that money on getting customers, not getting employees, although employees are just as important, if not more. But I start out in gigs, and I'll put it in household or sometimes labor. or a domestic, I believe it's called. And so I'll post an ad there. If that's not yielding enough responses, I then go ahead and I post ads in the paid group. And usually I'm going to get more responses and also higher quality responses there, just because it is paid and the bigger companies post in there. I also post on Indeed, again, sponsored and unsponsored. If I really want to get a bulk number of candidates, I'll sponsor it. Also, Indeed will block you from posting too many ads, so eventually you do have to sponsor one of them. So I will post on Indeed, or there's a number of other places like Indeed. I also place ads in English and Spanish newspapers, and I found that this works really well. People look in classified still, so posting them, especially in Spanish newspapers, has yielded great results for me. They typically translate your ad, so you just give them the English ad, and they'll send back the Spanish ad to you, and then they'll post it. Facebook hiring ads, they're fairly new, and I haven't had amazing results with them yet. I still have to tweak. I just started them last week, and I started them for the purpose of this webinar. And a lot of times you have people that just comment that they want the position without actually following through, without actually sending their resume, or without actually having experience. So Facebook hiring ads, they're nice because they're local, but so far they've been hit or miss for me. If anybody has better experience, I'd love to know, and I'm actually going to start running some more ads just so that I can really see if they're worth spending my money on. And also, again, most of these are free. It's English and Spanish newspapers. I found that they run about $140 for a 1/4 classified ad, color ad. So for a week, you're looking at paying about $140 if you get 1/4 size. You can get smaller or bigger depending on your budget, but that's what I've typically spent. Posting ads in churches, apartment complexes, grocery stores, things like that. I've gotten great responses with churches. Apartment complexes haven't been the greatest, but it's free. People generally allow you, property managers generally allow you to post in there. So I have used that, especially when I have, especially when I have downtime. I'll send my manager out and she'll just place ads on the complex boards, and that has worked well for churches and apartment complexes. It's been pretty good. Of course, it depends on what kind of apartment complexes you're going to, because obviously, most likely you're not going to find a cleaner in a building that's a luxury building, just because, you got to look at your demographics. Another great source of workers is referrals, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but we offer bonuses for our current employees to refer people to us. Generally, great employees aren't going to put themselves on the line for someone who's not going to be similar to them, and great employees or contractors or whomever, whatever you're using, again, I'm not going to distinguish between employees and contractors for the purpose of this webinar, but generally, someone who is contracted by you is not going to put themselves on the line and give you someone who they know is not going to be a great candidate. So referrals, offering bonuses to your workers for those referrals generally is a great way to find great workers. So what your ads should look like. So when you're looking for these workers, you don't just want to place just generic ads, because at the end of the day, there's so many competitors, so many people looking for people to work for them. So your ads need to stand out. I'll go through just some results on my ads, and then I'll show you some differentiating things that I do. So this is my actual Craigslist ad. I make it, I put an image in there. The image links to my Groove hiring, it links to my landing page, which has my Groove hiring widget on there. And so it looks exactly like my landing page, which you'll see on the next slide. So when they click through, they know that it's the same, company. It feels familiar. It also has their qualifications, and it's just aesthetically pleasing, and that has yielded pretty great results. 26 applicants in 5 days. I got 3 potential hires, and I can't say they're actual hires yet because I have to background check, train, do all of that, but 3 good candidates that I have talked to so far, that I've interviewed in person, that have showed up, so that's good. This Indeed ad below is not actually my ad, but my similar ad. I just screenshot my clean ad, and I actually used it I got 164 applicants in 5 days. So with Indeed, you're going to get a lot of applicants, but they're not necessarily going to have the experience that you need. You can specify that they do, but you'll get a number of just random applicants. So you're going to definitely see a lot of applicants, but you're not going to have as many. The ratio or the percentage isn't going to be as great as, say, Craigslist or newspaper or anything like that, because you do get a variety of people. But I have gotten quality people from the Indeed ads. I will say that with Craigslist, I usually am able to get solid teams. With Indeed, it's generally just solo cleaners. Excuse me, I prefer teams. So Craigslist is usually my go-to, but I will also post on Indeed because sometimes, you just want great cleaners. My newspaper ad, so this is the English. I have the Spanish version as well. I got 9 applicants in 5 days and 4 potential hires. Just want to make sure my audio is still okay. Can you guys still hear me, or did I drop out? Okay, I think we're back. So my newspaper ad, I got 9 applicants, and they called in. That's one thing you're going to want to do with a newspaper ad. This one I actually changed. I have them going to group hiring, but especially with the Spanish newspapers, I put my phone number, and my field manager actually speaks Spanish fluently, so I put her phone number, and she'll answer and speak to the candidates. I do ask that they speak English conversationally, because of course when you go into homes, you want to make sure that your cleaners can understand instructions and also converse with the clients and things like that. But having a field manager that speaks Spanish, it makes them, feel comfortable, because we did place the ad in the Spanish newspaper. And so, and same with the English newspapers, they come to me and I speak to them, and you want to make them feel comfortable and feel like this is a great company to work for. So for immediate hires, and I use this post when, I need someone tomorrow. I know my schedule next week is going to be huge, and I just need someone. So what I do is I just put cleaning team, individuals needed, call today, start tomorrow, and I put my phone number. I don't make them go through the application process. Of course, I do the whole background check and training and interview and things like that. I mean, it's expedited. But with this, I just have them call me immediately. I hopefully get them to come in that day. I hopefully get them background checked in the next 24 to 48 hours. Then I send them off with the trainer. So this is my immediate ad. And I find that does pretty well. Usually the people who respond to those ads are ready to work, ready to start. And so that, when you're in a bind and you want to expedite the process, I wouldn't suggest you using this all the time, because people kind of get desensitized to it, because the same people are going to be looking at your ads. I use it for emergency situations, and it's worked well for me. So what your landing page for your ads should look like. So when you're hiring, again, it's as much about you, and it's as much about the candidate as it is about you. To attract great candidates, you have to have a great job opening, because it is competitive, especially in my area. I probably have maybe 30 different companies posting at any given time. So I want to make sure my company stands out. And what I do is, and when they're not just calling me directly, I send them to my hiring page. And so it looks, like I said, it looks similar to our ad. It has a video on it, and you guys can see it at enjoymaids.com/hiring, I believe is the URL. And then it also has the group hiring application built directly into it, so that they can fill it out. And I always have that open. I'm always posting so that it's always open, and so that we always get a flow of candidates. Mine is pretty short and sweet. I found one, and I believe this was posted in the Lunch 27 group, that I also liked. It was from Clean Affinity. Theirs is a lot longer, has a lot more details, and I like it as well. It just depends on what your preference is. Mine, again, short and sweet. Theirs is more detailed. It shows their happy employees, and it makes you feel like this is a job you want to work for or work at. Again, with quality candidates, you're wooing them as much as you want them to woo you. So don't just say, oh, they're just cleaners, or oh, well, I'll take whoever I can get. Like, it's a mutual situation of impressing each other, of really getting those quality candidates, because as I'm sure you all know, getting quality cleaners is probably is definitely the most difficult part of the business, but then also it's as important as getting customers, because you need somebody to service those customers, and making sure you have a long-term workforce without turnover is really important. So again, you don't want to just send them to, you don't want to tell them to just email you. You don't want to, especially if this is a daily thing you're posting, you want to keep that flow of applications coming in. And I actually, 10 minutes before I started this, I got my little group hiring notification saying you have a new applicant. So what I'll do is on Monday I'll look through that. I'll probably call them and hopefully have them in by Monday afternoon or Tuesday to see if they're appropriate candidates. So setting up your interviews, and this is something I've learned, and I find it interesting because a lot of people also in the group find this to be commonplace. You're only expect 20% to show up. So if you have 3 interviews that day, probably no one will show up, and that has happened to me on Friday, or yesterday. I had 3 interviews set up, and usually I have a whole bunch. Nobody showed up. One lady rescheduled to Monday, and that's always iffy. The guy who I had high hopes for, who I talked to on the phone for a while, didn't show up at all. And another lady was supposed to show up to a test job, and then an interview after, she just said she didn't feel like coming in. So expect 20% to show up. So what that looks like is if you have 10 people that say they're going to be there, 2 of them are going to show up. If you have 20 people, you're going to get, if you're lucky, maybe 4 people to show up. So expect that most of your people aren't going to show up. And keeping that in mind, schedule multiple interviews for one day. Set aside an afternoon strictly for interviews. So don't say, okay, I'm going to go to Starbucks and I'm going to meet this one person, because you're going to travel to Starbucks and you're probably not going to meet anyone. You want to have 20 people ready to meet you at Starbucks, and you could have them all come in at the same time, because most likely, the good ones will be early. You'll have a few stragglers, and more than half of them won't show up. So always schedule multiple interviews for one day. Set aside that afternoon every week, and just make sure you have enough interviews so that you're not wasting your day. Another thing that you can do is you can post a job fair, and I tried this and it worked out pretty well as well. In the newspaper, I put the day that my office was just open for interviews, and I just said, come on by, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We'll be there. If you want a job, come see us. And you just keep it open. Whoever comes in, and you can interview them right on the spot. Post in churches, put a flyer up, just let them know on Tuesdays, or you could even say every Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. we have an open job fair. Let them know that you are hiring, and that they can come in at any time to fill out an application, do an on-the-spot interview, however you want to set that up. But again, never pinpoint yourself with 1 or 2 people, because most likely that's going to be a waste of your time when you could be doing marketing. Give them specific instructions to contact you the day before the appointment at a certain time to confirm. And again, this is similar to what I was saying with one of the guys in Launch 27 taught me. You want to give them, and I believe Pam Washington also uses this method, you want to give them instructions before, especially if this is a second interview or third interview, or you really like this person. You want to give them instructions because you want to know that they can follow these instructions. You want to know that they are going, you want to know that they're going to show up. And if they follow the instructions, there's still no guarantee that they'll show up, but they're more likely to show up. So okay, they called me at 2 p.m. the day before the interview, so I know that they're serious. And then also in the long term, if you give them instructions, you want them to follow them. So most likely they're going to be better candidates if they can follow that simple instruction of giving you a call the day before, or however you do it, sending you an email the day before, or sending you a text the day of. Whatever you specify, you're going to know that they're a better candidate if they can follow that instructions off the get. So setting up your interviews, like I said, it's an important part of the whole process, because again, you want to make sure you're maximizing your time, because otherwise you could be doing other things like marketing, etc. You don't want to waste a whole bunch of time chasing down people and hoping people show up. And that's something I had to learn the hard way. I've sat in many Starbucks or sat in my office and no one show up. So definitely heed the advice of just jam-packing as many people as you can, and then also seeing, you know, your potential cleaners or whatever local service business you have, follow those instructions straight away. Interviewing candidates. So some of the rules we have is always conduct an in-person interview, whether it's over Skype, FaceTime, coffee shop, or your office. And that's just so that you know that they are someone that you want to have in your own home. And again, of course, you want to keep as much bias and things out of it, but you also have to make sure, I mean, you're coming into someone's home, you have to make sure your customers will be comfortable. So maybe it's someone who can't actually, you know, isn't actually capable of doing the job. You know, maybe they wouldn't be able to get up the steps or lift something or anything like that. And so maybe you need to either partner them with someone who can, or maybe this is just not the right position for them. You always want to interview candidates just so you know that who you're hiring is someone who's going to fit your company, fit your brand, and do a good job. So what I'll do is sometimes I'll Skype depending on where I am. If I'm not I'm in Charlotte currently, so I was trying to do face-to-face ones on Friday, but no one showed up. But if I'm in New York, I will Skype them or I'll FaceTime them. Or like you said, if I'm in Charlotte, I'll do a coffee shop or I'll meet them at my office. When I do talk to these candidates, I ask them scenario questions, not just broad questions about their experience or technical questions. So it's great to ask them broad questions about their experience, and I always see in Launch 27 great technical questions like, what product would you use on a marble floor? And that's good, but those technical questions are things that you can kind of teach them. And broad experience questions really don't give you a good sense of, you know, if they're going to be reliable, things like that. Now, there are a few broad experience questions that I'll get into. Okay, sorry about that. My connection dropped. Can you guys hear me? If you can hear me, please press 1. I apologize for that. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, I see some people saying yes. All right, so, okay, great. So sorry about that. So I was talking away. But like I was saying, don't just ask broad questions about their experience or just technical questions, ask scenario questions. So for example, if a client complains while you're there, what would you do? Or if a client asks you to clean something that's not on the list, what would you do? Or if a client tried to solicit you to work for the company, what would you do? And of course, sometimes they'll give you the answer you want to hear, but a lot of times, especially if you ask enough questions, you'll get some tells that will show you who they truly are. So for example, I wanted to hire a woman, and I really liked her a lot. I thought she was great, but then she told me, she kind of let it slip. She said, yeah, I'm so great. When I left my previous job, I took half the customers with me because they loved me so much and they just wanted to stay with me. And that, of course, was a huge red flag. And she said, oh, and I'll bring them to your business, but you also have to, you know, keep in mind that most likely she'll take the customers from you and bring them to the next business. So just engaging in conversation and listening just as much as you are telling them about the job is important. So always listen, always ask questions and listen more, and just hear what they say so that you can, you know, get those tells whether or not they're going to be a great contractor or employee or whatever. And then look for a positive attitude. So this is something that's really important. If they start to bash their former or current employer, run, because they'll do the same to you. They'll do it in front of customers. I've had cleaners that just say the oddest things in front of customers, like, oh, she doesn't give us the right supplies, and tell customers that. And you want you never want someone who's negative. You always want someone who is positive throughout and has a can-do attitude no matter what the situation. So if they're in your office and they seem great, but then they say, you know, I couldn't stand my former employer, they did this, this, and that, just know that they'll do the same for you in front of customers if they're still employed by you or when they quit for their next job. So keep that in mind. Don't just ask them to sell themselves, sell your company as well. And this goes back to my previous point of people, there's a lot of competitors out there that are trying to woo great candidates. Don't just expect the candidates to want to work for you, especially if you're looking at candidates that are currently employed. Don't just expect them to want to work for you because you have an ad up. You want to sell them, again, starting with your ad to your landing page to when they get to you, tell them about why your company is better. Again, my company pays probably starts $2 more an hour. We offer, you know, bonuses and then, you know, gas and you know, different things. And especially if you're just starting out and you know that you're not going to have as many hours for them as, say, a Molly Maids or Mary Maids, you have to turn that into a positive. And tell them all the things that you will have for them. And then as business grows, they'll get busier and everybody will be happy. And you'll always be surprised how fast business will grow. You're never, most likely, ever going to have an issue with not enough business. I mean, in the beginning, it's going to feel like that, but your biggest issue is always, for the most part, going to be not having enough cleaners. So I would say get over that fear of just, you know, not having enough business for them and not having enough to sell to them, and just sell to them and tell them why they should want to work for you. And when they want to work for you, they'll be excited to work for you. And even if they have a day off that they need hours, just keeping them positive will keep them engaged and staying with the company. So once you've done that, it's important to onboard your new hires correctly. And again, this is another thing that helps with the perception of the position. And if your cleaners or whatever your local service business is, if they see that you're serious and that your process is serious, then they're going to take the job more seriously. And they're going to show up for that test clean, or they'll show up for their first week, etc. So onboarding your new hires is very important. What I do, and this is just my process, and I'd love to know other people's process, but this is my process that I've been taught that works pretty well, is after I meet them in person, I send them on a test clean. And this is actually before I background check them, but I send them with my manager who, you know, works side by side. So I know nothing's necessarily going to happen. And honestly, on occasion that, you know, that has bit me in the butt. Like what I'll do is I will ask them to send me their picture ID. I, you know, do a Google search. If nothing pops up, then I send them on a test clean. Sometimes something weird will pop up. One time a guy had it was something strange. He had like a misdemeanor for harassing someone. And it popped up. I asked him about it, and I loved this guy. I thought eventually this guy was going to be a manager. So when he told me, you know, it was a while ago, it was no big deal, just a misdemeanor, and this was just my Google search, I was like, okay, fine, I'll send him on a test clean. Of course, I sent him on a test clean, and he gets into a fight with my field manager and starts screaming at her. So generally, when I do my little Google searches before, and I usually weed out candidates that way first before I spend money on a background check. But if you do see something, and this should have been a red flag for me when I Googled, you know, don't send them on that test clean. But if you Google, nothing major comes up, what I'll do is I'll take their name and their, you know, the city they're in. I'll send them on that test clean, and again, I send them with my manager and another person. I'll send them on a team, a solo cleaner, my manager, and then there's them. And my manager stays with them at all times. She evaluates their attitude. Of course, if they're timely, you know, if they show up to the test clean on time, and their technical skills. So that's the first step for me. Then if they do well, if my manager recommends that I hire them, I bring them in for a final interview. And again, still evaluating whether they show up on time. That final interview, we discuss pay. They go in and they fill out all of our onboarding docs, including the background check. And then after that, at that point, then I background check them. Because again, you know, you don't have unlimited money to go through a lot of background checks. And you're going to go through a lot of people. Even after you do the background check and you fully onboarded them, they may only be there for 2-3 days. I had someone quit on Friday who I thought was great. She just wasn't interested. She got her paycheck and left. And I've spent money getting her onboarded, training, background checked. But at the end of the day, you know, it's great that I know 2 days in instead of when she has a full schedule and recurring clients. So sometimes you're going to background check them and go through that process, and they're still not going to work out. And this is another reason to always hire. And so then what I do after we background check them, I start scheduling them. And this is one of the questions that we're asked often, like, how do you schedule if you don't have that many jobs yet? One of the things I do is, especially because I try to hire people who are currently employed, and one of the great, and this is a tip, my field manager, I hired her, and she said, okay, you know, I'm so excited about this job, I'll be getting paid more, etc., but let me give my current job 2 weeks notice. So I knew that the consideration she had for her current job would end up being consideration she would have for my job. So what I try to do, since I'm hiring people that are employed, they'll say, okay, I want to give, you know, 2 weeks notice, and I'll say, okay, well, if you have some days off that you want to come in, we'll give you a couple jobs that day. And I onboard them slowly, and I let them know from the beginning that, you know, a lot of our jobs are scheduled so and so, maybe a week in advance, so they're assigned to our current techs. And even if this isn't the case, you know, I tell them that. And for me now, it's generally the case that we assign jobs beforehand, or the recurring jobs are already assigned. But I'm able to say, you know, give me 2 weeks and I'll get you a full schedule. And if any jobs pop up in the meantime, you'll be the first to have them. So I start them out with the expectations that they won't have a full schedule, but they will have a full schedule in the next 2 weeks. And that, of course, if anything pops up, they'll be the first to get it. And like I said, if they're currently waiting to end their current job, if they have any open days, I will put them on those open days. And that transition is nice. I can ramp up my you know, whether I'm using Thumbtack or I'm, you know, putting more money behind ads or I'm placing more flyers, I can ramp that up because I can feel comfortable that I have this person or this team, and they can slowly start to get the jobs and get a feel for how it goes and how it's going to work. And that gradual for me and that gradual for them works for both of us, because I can know if I can depend on these people and I can give them a full schedule and they can gradually get into the position, because I'm speaking specifically with cleaning, it's not an easy job. So getting them gradually used to the grind and the daily things that are difficult about it works well. So you don't want to just slam them with a full schedule, but you also don't want to not give them enough jobs in the next month. So promising them, you know, in a few weeks you'll have a full schedule, work with me for now until we get you to that point, is usually good for both of you. So then after that, keeping new hires, and I guess I just spoke about this in the previous slide, but what I do again is I let them know that I'll work them into a full schedule within 2 weeks. I offer bonuses and incentives for staying a certain number of days. So I believe if they stay past 30 days, they get a bonus, and then 90 days, they get a raise. So just keeping that as kind of a prize for them to stay engaged and do a good job. And of course, they also need to maintain a certain rating and not have any no-shows and issues, but this gives them an incentive to make sure they meet those goals. I also check in and I communicate with them to see how they feel about the job, and this is important because they want to know that you care, and you also want to get any red flags. I had one lady who quit a few days ago, and I knew she was going to quit. So I stopped assigning, you know, jobs to her frequently because I didn't want her to get any recurring customers that would be hard to switch over to somebody else. And I also just wanted to kind of transition her out slowly. But just me checking in and talking to her, I knew that, you know, our time together was coming to an end. And she had only been with me for a month or so and started out amazingly. And I really liked her, but I knew, actually more than a month, maybe 2 or 3 months, but I knew that it was kind of coming to a point where she wasn't going to be with me for much longer. So it's important to talk to your cleaners and just gauge them on where they are, just so you can make sure that you know you may need to replace that person shortly. And then identify candidates that can become team leads. And so even if you're only offering them $1 or $2 more, giving them the responsibility to be a team lead, but also knowing that you appreciate their hard work is something important and helps with retention. So what I'll do is after 90 days, if I see that this person is someone who can handle the responsibility, who has done a great job, I'll say, okay, let's offer you a team lead position. And again, even if it means very little, you know, even if there's no change in job responsibility, but they get a little bit more money, or even just the title, makes people feel like you're invested in them. And also makes them feel important and special. And another thing I do is after 30 days, I give them little business cards, and the cards say, hi, I'm this person. And again, that shows them that you're invested in them, that they're part of the company, and that they're an important part of the company. And again, I have employees, so it's, you know, something I can do. With contractors, you can't necessarily do stuff like that, but you can do other little things to make them feel important. And so I do these little things to know that they are, you know, special parts of the company, and if they feel that they're special, they will stay longer. And so then this is the final slide, and the final slide is and repeat. You're going to have to do this over and over again. You want to post your ads every day, or at least once or twice a week. You never want to stop hiring. You never want to stop posting your ads. You never want to stop interviewing. You have to be prepared for turnover, because that's just the nature of this business. I was super impressed with Rohan. He says about 75% of the people who work for him have been with him from the beginning of Maids in Black. But then he has 25% that just come and go, and so he's always hiring. He's always interviewing. And so you have to be prepared for turnover. And once your company grows and your employees or contractors have regular clients and they feel comfortable and you're able to offer some, you know, incentives and things like that, your turnover won't be as great. But when you're just starting out, just be prepared that there's going to be turnover and that you're going to need to adjust for that. So you have to repeat this process over and over again every day. Even if times are slower, always post ads, do your weekly interview days, and hire and train candidates. Never stop doing that. And then again, you just want to ask happy employees or contractors to refer their friends, because they're going to generally refer great candidates to you. So always keep that in, you know, whenever you're meeting with them, ask them if they know anyone, remind them of the incentives that you can provide them if they refer a great candidate, and just keep it going. So that's what I have for how to hire and retain great candidates, you know, great employees or contractors or whatever you have. I'd love to open it up. We went about 45, maybe 30, yeah, about 45 minutes, 40 minutes. So I'd love to open it up, and see if you guys have any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And so any specific questions? So how did you find hire your manager? You mentioned earlier, hire people that are employed versus via Indeed. Are you messaging the people that posted the Indeed ad for Molly Maids? So yeah, generally I message people who say that they work for Molly Maids. And again, I won't, you know, say, come work for me, I do this, this, and that. I'll just either post that I'm hiring, post just information about the company. I will just post general information so that if it's something that they may be interested in, they'll know I'm available. Or if they don't have enough hours, they know that this could be a great second job for them. How did I find my manager? So I found my manager the same way you find your cleaners. Right now, Rohan is letting me work with one of his managers, so that's been super helpful for the phones and things like that. But then I also have a field manager. She was working at a hotel. She was cleaning rooms and wanted more pay, just wanted to do less cleaning and more quality and things like that. So I found her. Again, she's bilingual. Really positive so far, really been, you know, a good asset. And I haven't had her for super long yet, but again, she's done really well in the time that I've had her. So I find my managers just like I find my cleaners, and I go through the same process with them. Before I had her, I had a terrible manager, and I had her for 6 months, and I just put up with it. And then once I got a great manager, it was like the day changed. It was, you know, instead of thunderstorms, it was rainbows. So a great manager makes a huge difference. And again, it's just asking those scenario questions, seeing if they can handle a task without asking you every single time, and really testing them first, because their job is to make your life easier and allow you to do things that you need to do. So that is, it's just like with cleaners, you just got to give them those specific tests. And I read this in the Facebook group. When I'm doing anything, I document it so that in each of my positions so I have a manager person, I have a field manager, and then I have the cleaners. Each of those positions have documents on how I would handle a certain situation. So anytime I come up with a situation that's new to me, I write it down, how I handled it, and that way I can give it to them so that they can have a blueprint for how to handle it as well. Is there a landing page for ads in L27, or do we need to design our own? I'm not quite sure what this means. I just designed my own, so I'm not. I think maybe you mean the theme street. So if you mean the theme street, I don't believe that there's a landing page, so you'll just want to design your own. And again, you want to make it specific to your company and your company's values, so it's not a bad thing to design your own. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple. You can embed group hiring, and I know group hiring's coming up with a lot of updates, not right now, but soon, where it'll be really useful for you to import your candidates in there. And currently, for me, I use it as a great place because email gets lost, so I just embed it on there, and also it looks more professional for the people who are applying. Do you pay straight hourly or hourly plus commission? Do candidates ask? So this has been a bit of contention between Rohan and I, because he pays percentage jobs. I pay hourly. He wants me to switch to percentage, and there's benefits to both. Right now, I'm, paying hourly, and again, it just depends on what you want to do with your business. The only reason why I pay hourly, generally, it ends up being the same percentage as percentage. Yeah, it generally ends up being the same percentage as if I paid them 60% of the job. Usually it's actually a little bit less. It rarely exceeds it. If it exceeds it, more times than not, it's much lower. So for me, I just like hourly because I don't have a consistent source of business yet. Because I'm, less than a year old. Sometimes some of my jobs come from Yelp, and one house can be, a $400 Yelp job, and then another, the same house, same standard of cleanliness, could be a $200 job. And I'm just not at the point where I want to haggle with my, employees about the percentage. And so for me, hourly works right now, but I can't say one is better than the other, and I know that a lot of people do either or. You're asking hourly plus commission. I don't do commission. I mean, I guess I do in a sense that I offer bonuses. I offer bonuses if they get a 5-star review. So not just the emails from Launch 27, but what they have, these business cards that says, "Hi, I'm Team Carter, and if you like me, please post a review on Yelp. Use my name." And so if they get that Yelp review that they ask for, they'll get a bonus, and then the client also gets a $25 off for their next service. And it works for both. Technically, you're not supposed to give them anything for reviewing you, but it is what it is. The clients love it, and also it most likely ensures that you're going to get their call the next time they need their house cleaned. So that's what I do in terms of commission. And yes, candidates always ask. They always want to know how much they're getting paid. Those situations that you document to give your cleaners and managers, would you be willing to share that documentation with us? Sorry, I can't, just because it's, I can't personally be liable if it doesn't work for your business. But it can give you an idea of what I do. So for example, if someone scratches a marble countertop, what do? I would document that, okay, first I would call the field manager would come out to inspect, they take a picture, they let me know, I call the client, so that's the documentation that I'm talking about, and it really is specific to my business and how I handle things. So I can't share that just because I can't, you're going to have a different way that you handle certain things. I know it varies from business to business, but did you start out strictly with employees or ICs, and what was your reasoning? So again, it's so weird for me that this is such a big point of contention, because at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same thing. With contractors, they just don't wear uniforms, and there's certain things you can't do with them. But at the end of the day, and they pay their taxes on their own and things like that. But at the end of the day, the process for hiring them is the same. The process for sending them out for jobs is the same. The process, I mean, you don't give them supplies, but other than that, the process is the same. The turnover is pretty much the same. I don't understand why people agonize over this decision. For me, I started out, I had 2 employees, and then I filled those gaps with contractors. So it was just kind of go with what worked at the moment. You know, if I had 2 cleaners that were my employees, I put them in uniform, gave them supplies, I sent them to the jobs first. If I had an overflow of jobs that weekend, I had 2 or 3 contractors, and I still do. I have 2 or 3 contractors that I can call and say, hey, my teams can't get to these jobs, can you get them? Can you do those jobs? And typically I end up paying my contractors a bit more, but they do their own supplies. I don't pay them gas, and it ends up being, you know, the same thing. So for me, I started with both. It's not a huge deal it's not, you know, it's not that thing, it's not something that people should agonize over, and I don't understand why that tends to be something that people agonize. Just choose both. That's what I do. Sometimes, you know, even to this day, if I know I have a job that I can't cover, but I really want to cover it, I'll go on Thumbtack and I'll look at reviews and I'll hire those contractors that are background checked. And, you know, you kind of just have to hope for the best. And that's, you know, at the end of the day, you got to hustle and make it work. And so I'll do that. I'll, you know, sometimes I'll meet them at the office before, send them out, and I go with that. But typically, my employees do all my jobs, and my contractors do, you know, what I have left over. All right, so do I have any other questions before we close out? We've been going for about an hour now. Anybody else want to get in a question? Again, of course, you know, this is a Launch 27 webinar, so I use Launch 27. I use Groove Hiring for my applications. I use the Launch 27 mobile app to send jobs to my cleaners. I use a virtual assistant to post jobs. And then yeah, those are my tools I use. If you have any questions about any of them, you can send an email to support or reach out to me, and I can answer those questions. Oh, I just got one more, so this will be the last one. What do you do if someone doesn't show up for the job? You panic and pray. I mean, that's just the nature of the business. It's going to happen. I see if I can fill the job with an employee nearby. I see if that doesn't work. I try and reschedule and offer a credit, you know, for the inconvenience. I had to do that today, actually. My team found out that their aunt had cancer, and this is a great team. I trust them, so I know that they're, you know, not making things up. So I had to reschedule the client, and that's just, at the end of the day, it's cleaning. I hate when you know, you have to miss a job and they have an event, but for the most part, people just want their house clean, and you know, it's not life or death. They'll be okay. That you can clean the next day or what have you. What do I do with the employee if they don't show up? I mean, generally, if they don't show up, they don't want a job anymore, really. It just depends on the reason. My field manager, she didn't show up for a job a week ago, and it wasn't completely her fault. I didn't confirm it with her. She doesn't generally go out to clean, so she didn't know. So there was, you know, I talk to her and make sure that doesn't happen again, and that's that. If they don't show up for a job, you know, and if you're communicating with them and you know that they'll probably, you know, don't want the job, then, you know, they've given you an out and they don't work for you anymore. So it's just situation by situation. If it's a team that I know is great, then I just talk to them and we figure it out. But yeah, generally, if they don't show up for a job, they don't want the job anymore, and then that's that. If there's a reason, I listen to the reason, and then we sort it out. All right, so that is everything. Again, guys, let me know if you have any questions, and let me know if this was helpful to you. The webinar will be available for replay, and I will send that out probably by Monday. Okay. All right. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.